Warning: the following video contains explicit language, which may be offensive to some viewers or inappropriate for children. The content within this video is intended for mature audiences only.
Warning: this video may contain explicit descriptions of drug use, violence, and sexual situations. Viewer discretion is advised as this content may not be suitable for all audiences.
Hello and welcome to this video. I hope everyone is doing well. Hope everyone is having fun. Hope the universe is treating you well. We are returning to The Kingdom of Fear by Hunter S. Thompson. We are in the middle of him getting visited. We use the term visited, and we're going to use it very, very loosely, by a porn star that wants to get busy with him. So, and her husband wants to watch, I guess. I don't know. So, or actually I do know. I've read the book several times, but I don't want to spoil it for you all.
About 20 minutes later, there was a knock on the door. I had arranged with Sims, out of laziness, I guess, that he could bring her into the kitchen and I would shake hands with her, and then he was taking her off dancing. I even gave him money. And that is where we lost it.
Like I said, said in the last video, Thompson is very self-aware when he screws up, and he's not afraid to admit his screw-ups.
I stood up and said hello to the witness, and she began babbling with all sorts of questions she wanted to ask me. What's your sex life like? What do you think of fever-fresh nightgowns? Gibberish and bullshit, which I wanted no part of. Quiet, quiet. Be quiet, I said.
And the thing is if you've ever watched or seen the interview with Johnny Depp the first time he met Hunter S. Thompson, and his description, and you think about it, and you think about the way the person who's reading this is portraying Thompson's, actions and his verbiage. It's just one of those things. But I mean, take it for what it is. Those people that are a big fan of Hunter S. Thompson's, it's just one of those things, we know. So yeah.
I stressed that to Sims, too. She has to be quiet here. Sims wanted to continue watching the Grammys, and somehow the witness ended up sitting in the armchair just to watch the Grammys. I kept her quiet for a while. If she started to talk, I was harsh with her, barking, "Shut up!" During commercials, she would start babbling and pestering me. When she continued to ask me about my sex life, I made her read Screwjack out loud. All right, I said, "You're
that's kind of embarrassing there.
Curious? Here's a story I just wrote." She never finished Screwjack. It really disturbed her. I said, "What's wrong with you? Keep going."
I imagine it would.
Can't you read? She read about half of it and said, "Wow, what the shit is this? What kind of a pervert?" It got to her directly, but I forced her to continue. I knew that book would tell her something, and I could tell she learned from the experience. She was not as loud afterward. Meanwhile, we were waiting for Buffett to come on, and I was getting very edgy. It is true that the night may have been a little boring. It was boring to me. Up to that point, all kinds of yo-yos and nymphomaniacs and fiends with plenty of dope to lay out had visited my home. I've had assholes of serious magnitude, including senators, in my house. I should make a list of the most horrible assholes ever to visit.
I would love to see that list, to be honest with you.
But if I did, Gail would not be at the top of that list. I had sympathy for her when I realized that she was being run by this husband, who was probably a pimp for the Detroit Lions. She was a blemish, even on the sex trade. We were stuck in the Grammys, and I was stuck with her. Sims was irresponsible, and I was full of annoyance, as I would be with any loud stranger that somebody else brings into my kitchen. The witness was hard to insult.
One thing I gotta say about Hunter S. Thompson is I guarantee he would have never, ever had to pay a porn star to keep quiet.
She was dumb, and also professionally inured from the sex business to caring what people really thought or felt. The XXX brand will make you a little thick-skinned after a while, like an armadillo. Maybe I'm like that. It is a mystery.
Though being thick-skinned's not a bad thing. Though I wonder if there's such thing as being too thick-skinned.
Why it bothered me. But this woman also had no sense of humor. She was the unwanted stranger. That was her position in the room. I didn't say more than 10 words to her, including be quiet. I was damn careful to keep people and things between us. I may have shaken her hand, but that was it. I remember telling the Aspen Times later that I could not even have imagined having her in the hot tub with me, as she alleged I tried to.
Yeah, and of all the times I've read this book, and now we're listening to it together, one of these days I'm going to have to Google just to see what this particular person looks like. And, because if Hunter S. Thompson didn't want to have sex with her, there's a reason.
Because she would have displaced too much water. The basketball game had been interesting. The Grammys were not. This irritant had been introduced into the social fabric, but I was as much of a Southern gentleman as I could be. I knew...
See, that's it. I think that men that grow up in the South, or in Texas or the South, have this thing ingrained to us. We may talk a bunch of shit. We may be... talk about how big our cocks are and how much pussy we fucked. But when it comes to the rubber hitting the road, it's fairly, we're fairly benign about it. It's all talk, more bark than bite.
I knew what I was eventually going to do that night, but it was not going to be with this woman. The only question was how soon I could get her out. I kept trying to get her away from the phone in the office. She was constantly leaving the room to call her husband in private. I had appointed Sems to watch her, but Sems failed. I'm never going to forgive Sems for this. It was an utter failure of a performance as a friend and a protector. I don't blame Tim, but he could see weird shit brewing. Tim read the situation and saw it was like a game of musical chairs. My support system fell apart when those swine left me alone with the witness. When Sims got up, I said, "God damn it, this is your date. What are you doing? What do you mean you're leaving?" But he just got up and left.
He got bored.
He'd been on the nod for a long time. Tim, who had failed to fix the amplifier, was also planning to leave. I said, "Tim, you gotta take this woman somewhere. You gotta take her." But he couldn't. No, he said. "Carol Ann would kill me." That was true, of course. I'd meant for him to give her a ride to the tavern. I couldn't take her anywhere. She was very pushy, butting into other people's conversations and assuming they were enjoying her gibberish.
Yeah, there are people like that, and yeah, I've unfortunately met lots of them, especially the years preceding the dark days of 2020.
She was also professional in that way. You might have thought she had done this kind of work before. She was a little bit like a cop. Later, she described to the cops how she knew we were dope fiends because we were all asking her, "Are you sure you're not a cop?" I didn't really think she was a cop. That is how stupid I was. I thought she was just one more dingbat, one more groupie who was unusually determined. I'd been making cranberry and tequila because the margarita mix had run out.
Ooh, cranberries and tequila. I like both. But I just not two flavors that I would imagine going together really well, to be honest with you.
I was in that kind of mood. Let's all have a few margaritas. And she, that sot, she belted them down. We all did, no doubt. That's what it was all about. Some margaritas to celebrate. We were on about the third jug in the blender, or...
Oof. Wow, that's a lot of tequila. Because when you're talking jugs of tequila, you're talking like half the gallon quantity and not of real high quality.
Fourth jug, or fifth perhaps, when we switched to cranberry juice, and she'd been getting louder and more randy. She was making open cracks to Kat, asking, "Who are you to hunt her?" She grabbed me and said, "Who's this girl? Why is that other girl here? We don't need her around." Shortly after Tim left, I reached for the phone and told the witness, "Let's call a goddamn taxi for you." As I dialed the T in 925 TAXY, she rushed over, knocking the phone down, and cut me off. It was a quick, startling movement. She leaped, surprisingly fast for a rhino, from 5 or 6 feet away.
Woo. Yeah, I imagine that was scary, especially if you're inebriated.
"Oh no, don't let it end like this," she pleaded. "You were always my hero." I was curt with her. She had no business here. I had not encouraged her in any way. I tried to call for the taxi a second time. She immediately reached over, a long reach, with her hairy tentacle of an arm to hang up the phone, and I was shocked that anybody would dare to do that. I screamed at her, "Get the fuck away!" And I think Kat actually restrained her. That was the second rush.
Yeah, I think Kat's testimony is probably what saved him in court.
She made 3 rushes on the phone. On this second one, the cabbie heard a bit of the ruckus. Later, we had to get him to testify, and it was very tricky to establish that I did call and that she had cut it off. She was warned twice, and then she had a pretty clear shot at me on the third attempt. I was trying desperately to get through to the taxi company. I could see her coming as I began to call again. This time, I had just started to stand up. As she came rushing at me, her hip crashed into the cutting board and the cranberry juice fell onto the tile floor. The juice bottle went bouncing around and interfered with her rush. I was cursing her. "You goddamn idiot, what the fuck are you doing?" I was trying to get up, and she came at me then, angry. Very...
I imagine that was a scene. A bunch of drunks and the tequila drunk on top of that. Wow. Yeah, that's... Yeah.
Very angry now. She'd hurt herself, hitting the cutting board. I remembered the prefrontal lift, which is my most dependable way of ending an argument, particularly when somebody's coming at you. In this move, you hit them in both shoulders with the heels of your hands using a lifting motion. She was coming at me with speed, so I applied a little force. Considerable motion was employed. Usually, the attacker helps you a lot because you can't do a prefrontal lift on anybody who's not coming at you. It doesn't work and looks like a fag punch.
And the thing is it's very effective. If you catch the person just right in the shoulders and you're coming up like this, they wind up on their back.
The prefrontal lift stopped her, although her feet were still moving, and she went back on her large butt with a kind of a thump and ended up sitting on the floor against the refrigerator. I was satisfied. I had been cursing her for an hour. Everything she did was rotten. Her questions were stupid. "I want you out of here," I said. There was never any pretense about this. She had a hideous penchant for coming in my area, hassling me, and she was very stupid. Big, stupid, and I was never entirely sure whether she had her own police agenda or not.
Yeah, and sometimes when I've read this book, I think about it if the whole thing may have just been a setup to try to get him in court, or she was actually genuinely wanting to have sex with him.
It was 5 days later at about 10 o'clock in the morning when my neighbor appeared outside, right below the kitchen window. He was very agitated and he looked like he had come in a hurry. I walked out and said, "Hi, come on in, have a beer." He said, "No, I can't do that now." He had left his car running. He seemed agitated and afraid of me. He was parked far away from where he usually did, with his car almost backed into the bushes. "They're going to come and search your house," he said. I walked down the driveway to get closer to him and he mumbled, "Those bastards they're coming out here. They're going to come get you with a search warrant." I couldn't put it together, so I asked, "What crime? What for? What are you talking about?" Seize the night. A quote from Curtis Wilkie from the Boston Globe.
Yeah, I imagine if one of my neighbors was doing that, I would, I'd be wondering why they would be coming after me with a search warrant.
The night does not belong to Michelob. The night belongs to Hunter Stockton Thompson, the night manager.
See, I always keep forgetting that it's Stockton. For some reason, I keep wanting to say the S stands for Simpson. I don't know. It's just the way the silly putty between my ears works.
The noonday flight out of Denver is running late today. Another brainless jam-up on the runways at Stapleton International. But no matter. The passengers are mainly commercial people. Harried-looking, middle-aged businessmen wearing blue shirts with white collars and studying Xerox copies of quarterly sales reports. Across the aisle from me is a rumpled-looking pot-bellied wretch who looks like Willie Loman, slumped in his seat like 2 bags of rock salt and drinking Diet Coke.
Yeah, not the best bill of health, I guess.
He is reading the money section of USA Today. In front of me are 2 giddy young boys wearing matching Walkman machines with built-in mics that allow them to talk to each other through the headphones. They've removed the armrest between them and are now necking shamelessly and bitching occasionally at the stewardess about the lateness of our arrival. The San Francisco airport is closed by violent weather, and we are into a long holding pattern.
I wonder at what point that they just have to say screw it and redirect the plane to another airport,
which will cause them to miss an important business appointment. So what? We're all businessmen these days. Ray Stevens said it 20 years ago. Take care of business, Mr. Businessman. The bell rang for me last night, about 13 hours ago, in fact, and now I am slumped and jittery like some kind of lost polar bear across 2 first-class seats on UAL number 70 from Denver to San Francisco. And my business on this trip is definitely not the kind of all-American nuts and bolts hokum that I feel like sharing with my fellow businessmen across the aisle.
Yeah, I imagine not.
There is not a bull market for raw sex, amyl nitrites, and double-ended Greek dildos in the friendly skies of United.
He got a point.
Some people sell U-joints, and others are in the meat service and human commodity business. But I have nothing in common with these people. I am in the sex racket, which is worth about $10 billion a year on anybody's computer. And I am flying to San Francisco to take on the whole city government, the mayor, the DA, and the police chief. And now into San Francisco again. The sleek green hills and the wretched white salt flats beyond the Berkeley Hills.
Okay, we will go ahead and wrap this up here. This is a pretty good place to stop. And as always, my friends, be a good human. Be good to other humans. Peace.
Hey, it's 10 p.m. Do you know where your children are?